considering the fact that I made a Yuta is overrated video quite recently, I know this gives me a pretty bad look making a video saying Yuta's potential is capped, especially considering I have the reputation of being the biggest Yuta hater in the JJK community. Now listen, funny enough, in defense, this video is actually in defense of Yuta. So it's actually more of a theory video and a power scaling one. It's kind of both of them. So actually let me know what you think about this kind of semi-theory and semi-power scaling video. But I think it's a pretty interesting one. I've thought about it quite a lot and it might explain why Yuta isn't as strong as he could be. So now let's get into the crux of the theory. Now, Yuta is very, very strong. He has more cursed energy than even Gojo Satoru, who is pretty much the god king of this whole universe. Though of course Gojo has his infinity, his 6 eyes, he has all these hacks, so he never runs out of cursed energy, he manipulates space-time, he can bend the laws of the universe, and of course his output is way higher too. Though in all defense, Yuta does appear to be stronger than Gojo was at this point, which by the way is actually going to be my next video. It's actually going to be Teen Gojo versus Yuta. So I wasn't even planning to plug that, but there it is. But yeah, it is pretty interesting to think about. So Yuta is actually stronger than Gojo was at this point, though that doesn't mean he's gonna beat him, since obviously being stronger doesn't mean you win, especially in something as complicated and well written as JJK. But the point being, Yuta throughout many times in this series has been compared to Gojo through many characters, such as when Yuji built his presence, you know, everyone, Naoya even, along with Choso, were absolutely shook from base Yuta alone, which is just nuts. They were shook from it, and Yuji compares it directly to a creepier version of Gojo, which keep in mind, this is not Rika, by the way. I mean, it could be the partially manifested Rika, maybe, but it does appear that it was Yuta himself, maybe with a slight presence of Rika too. And of course, he was even compared to by the man himself, Gojo Satoru, who says Yuta is the next generation. Though of course, Gojo is very notorious for incorrectly power scaling and even overscaling his students, thinking that they can get on his level, which is a whole video for another day, such as Megumi is never going to reach that level. I'm not saying he doesn't have special grade potential. I definitely think Megumi does have special grade potential, but Gojo was absolutely incorrect in his analysis of thinking that, just like in the past, how 6 eyes was as strong as the 10 shadows. There's a bunch of reasons, but Megumi is never going to reach that state. Nor is Nobara, nor is Yuji. Though I do think Yuji can become special grade. Again, the Yuji thing is a whole video as well. But it does seem that Yuta in particular is very special, since before he was sealed, he actually even says, not Hakari by the way, just Yuta, how Yuta's the next thing, or Yuta killed Geto's body so he can stop Kenjaku, which is high praise. Even though Gojo overscales his students, this was one student in particular who he knew was that strong. What makes this even more clear is that Gojo did have this feeling that he was going to get sealed, so we see a flashback actually before Shibuya that he is talking to Yuta in particular, and he says, if something happens to me, you gotta look after the first years and all that. So he actually goes to Yuta to be the one to, not anyone else, keep in mind, he goes specifically to Yuta to take care of the first year. So not only does he have that much faith in his power, but he also has that much trust in him as well. So there's actually a lot of evidence that leans towards Yuta being someone who can actually reach Gojo's level, especially considering the fact that if you compare teen Gojo in his second year, even post-awakening, to teen Yuta, it's pretty close. So why is it that I think Yuta is just capped out, or that he just cannot reach this level of Gojo or even Sukuna? The reason I say this is because it's actually kind of an unfortunate nerf that Yuta made on himself when he was a kid. So this is where it's semi-theory crafting, so there's a lot of evidence for it, but again, it is somewhat theory-based. The point being, remember when Yuta made Rika? The thing is, Rika was made, as we find out at the end of the JJK 0 manga, and I assume movie as well, where in the beginning it was that Rika cursed Yuta, we find out at the end that it's actually Yuta that cursed Rika. So Yuta as a kid, obviously just being an absolute prodigy and having this godlike potential, because remember, Yuta is not only part of the Gojo family, and he's a part of one of the 3 vengeful spirits descendants, he's also part of the Fujiwara clan, a whole separate rival clan of the Gojo clan. He has the bloodline of 2 beastly clans, so most people actually don't know this. It's absolutely crazy, by the way, that he has 2 insane bloodlines. It probably explains why he's so powerful. But back to what I was saying, when he was a kid, he was the one who cursed Rika. Now, what did this do? Basically, he used his cursed energy as a kid to bind Rika's soul to the current world, so he didn't let her soul pass on. Since he was there when Rika died, he kind of tied it to the real world, and it made a cursed spirit with his cursed energy, and of course, this being Rika. Okay, now that's fine and good, but why did this nerf him in the long term? If anything, shouldn't him having this behemoth, Rika, be a buff to him? I mean, shouldn't that be something that's making him way stronger? As we've seen, Rika is not only stronger than Yuta, being more durable, faster, has more power, can store cursed tools, allows him to use mimicry, and has far more cursed energy. Shouldn't it be the case that this is a big buff to him? Actually, it isn't, because, well, here comes the theory. I theorize that to make Rika, or to bind her soul, Yuta actually, well, we actually do know he used his own cursed energy to bind Rika. That's something that came from him specifically, and him being a prodigy, he was able to do it and create this monster. Now this is actually the part that's theory crafting. I think that by doing this, he actually used up a lot of his cursed energy from his overall cursed energy, like a large chunk of it, to tether Rika's soul to this current world and to make the cursed spirit. So to make this Shikigami or cursed spirit of Rika, he had to sacrifice pretty much, I imagine, like a binding vow, a large chunk of his cursed energy permanently to make Rika. Because remember, what is true is that he did have to use cursed energy to tie Rika to this world, and not only to tie her soul, because later on we see the soul is free, but just to create Rika as a whole. Rika is formed from his cursed energy. That is a creature born from Yuta's cursed energy. So the theory that I have is, if Yuta had never made that, say, binding vow or created Rika in this way, Yuta would pretty much be the combination of him and Rika in just himself, in his base. So imagine how strong Yuta is already. Imagine how strong Rika is, an absolute behemoth. Imagine if these two were just in one person. So imagine Yuta is now dozens of times stronger than he currently is. And now imagine he has access to mimicry by himself in his own arsenal. So it's not something he needs to summon Rika for. Imagine he could have used mimicry himself, or that maybe he could even store curse techniques. Maybe that's something very specific to Rika, since that doesn't actually seem to be a curse technique, kind of. See, it actually seems more specific to Rika is just holding the curse tools like a storage. So maybe he couldn't do that. I mean, maybe he could, but at the very least, the mimicry, his overall cursed energy, his strength, his speed, his durability, all of it would absolutely skyrocket. And this actually might make it so he doesn't have the time limit. Maybe he would still have the time limit actually for mimicry, maybe, but probably not. And what he definitely wouldn't have a time limit on is all of the cursed energy he just permanently has now. So do you see what I'm saying? Because remember, Rika is born from Yuta. Rika is Yuta's cursed energy manifested. He's used his cursed energy to create this thing. And it was even said that the mimicry or copy ability, depending on which translation you use, is actually something that's Yuta's, not Rika's, yet it's something he can only use when Rika's out. So it seems like this is a binding vow or a sacrifice he's made without actually knowing it to keep Rika's soul and to create the Shikigami. He had to make the sacrifice of now losing access to these things himself. So in exchange probably for using the mimicry himself and losing a lot of cursed energy, it probably all went to making this cursed spirit Rika and to tying the soul here. And the thing is, even after Rika's soul was freed, it's not like he is gonna get all the cursed energy back. He's already made Rika. It's too late. Rika's now his cursed technique, or is tied to his cursed technique. And we do know it is a binding vow in a sense, because he needs to wear the ring to even summon Rika or to fully use his cursed technique, which is his. The mimicry, remember, is not Rika's, it's Yuta's cursed technique. But yet he needs to use it through Rika. And he also needs to wear the ring on his finger to even summon Rika fully. So it seems that, again, at the cost of, he had to sacrifice all of this and make these roundabout ways to use his full power curse technique just to make Rika, because as a kid, that's what he wanted. He didn't want Rika to die. So it's unfortunate, but it does seem that as a kid, he didn't even know it, but he kind of capped his potential subconsciously, because obviously he had a desire to not have Rika die. This is kind of in defense of Yuta, who's not been as impressive, considering this is someone who's supposed to be hyped to Gojo, where he's probably 8 or 9 tiers below Gojo in full powered Sukuna. And keep in mind, I have Kenjaku, Jackpot Hakari, and Yuta like the highest tier, and then 8 whole 9 empty tiers, maybe even more. Just empty tiers are between them lot, and then the highest tiers, Gojo and full powered Sukuna. We do have to remember that he's only in his second year of high school. He's pretty close actually to how strong Gojo was in his second year. But the thing about Gojo was, Gojo had so much room to grow. He had only recently unlocked some new abilities by his second year, such as the Hollow Purple and Red Glow. He hadn't even improved his Limitless to how strong it could have been. He just got Reverse Curse Technique, and he didn't even yet have his domain expansion. So this was a Gojo who had a tremendous room to grow, as we see he does over the next 11 years. Whereas Yuta has grown incredibly fast from his first to second year, but there is a cap on how strong he can get. And of course, this is because of Rika. Rika, who you'd think is his strongest asset, is actually something that maybe, keep in mind, it's just what I think is actually holding him back tremendously. As if he had never formed Rika, he would have had mimicry himself, he'd have had all that cursed energy to himself, and he would have been way more powerful. And we've seen that Yuta currently has fully developed all of his abilities. He's mastered his domain expansion, he's a prodigy and mastered his reverse curse technique, he's stocked up on curse tools, and he's also stocked up on a lot of mimicry tools. So it does seem that he has far less potential to grow compared to Gojo in his second year. But what I will say is that doesn't mean he's not going to get stronger. I imagine 11 years from now, so say Yuta was prime Gojo's age, the current Gojo, I imagine Yuta would be way stronger than he is right now. I just don't imagine it being as strong as Gojo full powered Sukuna, but he would be a lot stronger than he currently is. So it's not like he's capped that hard, but he's capped that hard, if that makes sense. And of course, the biggest thing is that time limit. It's absolutely horrendous, because if he had all of this in base, he wouldn't have these time limits or these time constraints. He just wouldn't. I mean, considering the fact that no other character has a time limit on their curse technique, it's not like Sukuna can only use his Cleave and Dismantle for 5 minutes. It's not like Gojo's Limitless is activated only for 5 minutes. If Yuta didn't have this go around where he had Rika be the one who has to channel his own curse technique, he would have had mimicry for an infinite number of times, and he wouldn't have this issue of being at his full power for 5 minutes. Now, could he increase his time limit? We don't actually know. It could be possible, let's say 10 years from now, maybe his max time limit with Rika is 5 minutes more. Maybe it's 10 minutes or 15 minutes. I mean, that's really unlikely, and I don't see it ever being more than like 15 minutes, considering how he's already kind of mastered all of his techniques and 5 minutes is all he can muster. But it is possible that his time limit could increase, but the fact that there's a time limit to begin with is very bad. And if the fact that all of his curse technique and curse energy was just in his base form, you know, it would make him way stronger than he is. Way stronger. So yeah, it seems pretty unfortunate that Yuta's done this, but this actually comes in defense of Yuta. So when people saying, oh, Yuta isn't that strong, but when people say that, there is a reason. I mean, unfortunately, Yuta, without him actually knowing, he just capped his potential as a kid. But that doesn't mean he's not going to get stronger. I just don't think he's going to reach Gojo's level. And what I mean by this is, so this is kind of going to be the final point, is that I don't think he's going to reach this state as a human as Gojo did. So there is the possibility that he could transcend through other means, these being abandoning his humanity and turning into a curse spirit, which is what Sukuna did. Sukuna, if most of you don't remember, was actually a human and a sorcerer when he started out. But as he got stronger and stronger and he was abandoning his morality and his humanity, he actually turned into a curse spirit, which by the way is the craziest, most obvious point that people get mixed up. Yes, Sukuna is 100% a curse spirit. I mean, what type of human have you seen with 4 arms, multiple eyes, and has kind of got 2 heads where it's split in half? And he's also a cannibal who eats cooked humans. Transcending from human to curse spirit is something we've seen even with Naoya currently, as a current example. An even better example is the 3 vengeful spirits who came from the 3 big clans, so the Zenin clan, the Kamo clan, and the Gojo clan. The 3 heads of these clans, I think it was a couple hundred years ago, even nearing 1,000 years ago, I don't know the exact date, actually probably close to 1,000 years ago since it was around the Heian period, just going off the top of my head. But the point is, the strongest 3 members of these clans actually all turned from human, when they were already very powerful humans, into some of the strongest cursed spirits we've ever seen in the history of the series. Well, I guess we've never seen them, but they've said to be the strongest. They're called the 3 vengeful curse spirits, which you may have heard the name go around in the series as you've read and watched it. So yes, Yuta could, in theory, if he abandons his humanity like Sukuna, he could transcend onto that Gojo and Sukuna level that way, as even Ishigori and Udo said that. But of course, Yuta's just never going to do that, so he's never going to be as strong as Gojo. I see no way in any scenario, even if he's going to die, or if someone's going to die, where he would abandon his humanity to transcend. It just doesn't seem like something in his character. So as a human, unfortunately, he's never going to reach that Gojo or Sukuna level. He could have. Funny enough, if he didn't have Rika, he could have, but he just can't. But again, if he decides to transcend, become a cursed spirit, abandon all of his values, and just become a calamity, like Udo and Ishigori said, then yes, he could become that strong. So there is that buyout clause that Yuta fans can say. But yeah, that's the video. I was actually going to upload a video slandering the grade 1 sorcerers, funny enough. Another negative video. Wow, Kaio Breeze, negative video titles. What a surprise, no one would have guessed. But to be fair, I did make this title a bit more harsher, you know, for Yuta. I was doing this to kind of tease the Yuta fans, even though it's not really a video downplaying Yuta. It's actually giving him a lot of excuses as to why he's so weak. And again, weak as in full-powered Sukuna and Gojo, not weak as in every other character in the series, since the only other 2 characters who can actually stand up to him is Hakari while in Jackpot, and Kenjaku with his 10 million curses. So yeah, not weak, but you know what I mean, not the strongest. But yeah, I'll have that grade 1 sorcerer slander video in 2 days whenever I make it. Maybe 3 if something comes up, but hopefully 2 days. So be on the lookout for that. And if you enjoyed the video, please do consider subscribing. I make a ton of JJK videos hating on Yuta, so if you enjoyed... No, I'm just kidding, I don't hate Yuta, I'm teasing in the title. If you enjoy JJK content though, please do be sure to subscribe. I have a ton on the channel. I have theory videos, what if videos, power scaling videos, versus videos between very strong characters, and the whole bunch. So yeah, if you like JJK, please do subscribe. And yeah, that has been the video on why Yuta is capped out. I imagine it's gonna have a fair few dislikes, just like my Yuta is overrated video. That video was actually a pretty positive one for Yuta. It was more of a Sendai Colony breakdown, but just because of the title and the thumbnail alone, a lot of people were triggered. So again, I'm gonna kind of tease the Yuta fans with this video, give it a negative title, just see the hate comments come in, and just to play with them a bit, even though it's a video pretty much defending Yuta. So if you see those hate comments, just know I did get some people, you know. But if you genuinely do think that maybe I'm wrong on this theory, because again, this is just a theory that Yuta sacrificed his cursed energy, but it does seem like this is the case, since if he had never made Rika, he would have had all that cursed energies himself, and we already know Rika's stronger than him, so it'd be at least a 2 times boost, probably even way higher than that actually, like 3 to 5, maybe even 10 times stronger than he is. And then of course he has access to mimicry and base, no time limit. But yeah, I've drawn this out too long. If you've made it this far, you're an absolute legend, and let me know by telling me you're a part of the Higuruma fan club. And that's all. Yeah, take care and have a nice day. See ya.